We have a Republican candidate. We weren't able to get it done in time for the deadline, but this man stepped forward and said, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm willing to do it. And his name is James Buchal. James, you go by James or Jim?
James.
James, all right. James, how are you today?
I'm fine. I'm enjoying some good weather for a change up here in Portland.
Holy cow, man, you're not kidding. If I could go take this whole thing and sit outside, I would. It's beautiful out there. All right, so you've stepped up and you've said, hey, I'll run for Attorney General. And I want to ask you the same thing that I asked Thomas Cox, who also, of course, stepped up to be a write-in candidate for a treasurer. Ask him the same question. Are you in this to win this, James?
I'm in this to win this. I'll go out and I'll campaign and I'll give speeches where people will hear me. I have some skepticism as to the degree to which the people of Oregon will support a real race like this, but I'll give it a good effort.
All right. Well, where does that skepticism come from? Just from the fact that we're we're a blue state? Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yeah, primarily.
Okay. So it's kind of you sort of have that, wow, what's the matter with Republicans type thing? How come we can't do anything?
Right. I mean, I've seen them behave like whip dogs over and over again.
Well, maybe he's going to take somebody like you to fire him up a little bit.
Always possible.
That's right. You never know where it might come from. You never know. All right, so what do you see? Have you taken the time to sort of study or look at a little bit what the Attorney General, what kind of an effect you could have if you were Attorney General today?
I've got some ideas.
Oh, please tell.
Well, people should know that unlike most states, the Oregon Attorney General is just a statutory office. It's not a constitutional office. So the legislature can sort of declaw the Attorney General at any time. And the legislature hasn't given him very many claws over time. But one of the interesting things that happened in 2009 is they passed a False Claims Act that said that the Oregon Attorney General can, on his own initiative, just bring lawsuits going after anybody who makes a false claim against the state. So one of the things I would hope to do is go around the state and say, hey, are you in business and do you have some crooked competitor who's conspiring with the state agents to win all the contracts? Or do you know somebody who's scamming the state on this? Or do you know there's somebody who's scamming the state on that? And, let's get her done.
Now, that's something I'd never thought about. Let me ask you, just speaking of that it sounds to me like you know a little bit about this stuff. What is it that you do in your day job, so to speak?
In my day job, I represent people with problems, usually with the government.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have cases right now against the Oregon Department of Justice, and I've had them throughout my career.
So, in other words, you're an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought that I had read that. I don't want to make people to know. So, gee, let me see.
I think it might be a job requirement. I'm not sure.
I was just thinking, Attorney General, attorney. Yeah, that kind of goes together, doesn't it? Yeah. Again, it's James Buchal, Buchal. Now, where are you based out of, James?
Portland.
You're in Portland itself, or one of the suburbs?
Yeah, in the belly of the beast.
Right. Oh my goodness! Holy cow! So, as an attorney, this is just a side note, but as an attorney, was there sometimes when the whole Occupy thing was going on last fall, did that disrupt you at all? Were you sometimes thinking, as an attorney, I'd sure like to go out and sue something? No, I mean, you know what I mean? Did it frustrate you?
Well, I thought it's a great tragedy in my view, because you have all these young people who have the pervasive sense that there's something wrong. And the only people who are really organized, and there's two directions they can go. They can go toward freedom and liberty and justice and truth, or they can sort of go toward the commies. And unfortunately, the commies are the only ones out there with a ground army sucking them all in.
That's true. Great point. People have said in some ways there's not a lot of difference between Occupy and Tea Party people, and I disagree with that. But there is a little sliver, and that is
there's an area of overlap.
Yeah. Of not happy with the current state of our country. Now, that's where the disagreement really widens.
I have a philosophical principle that I hope doesn't alienate your listeners, but my philosophical principle is that in order to win this race, you have to focus on you ever seen those Venn diagrams when you were a kid and you draw the two circles and there's the area that overlaps in the middle, Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think you need to focus on that. And I think that the great unifying theme of the campaign and of trying to unite Oregon in some sense is to push the virtues of decentralization and simplification.
Now, okay, so I'm a DJ, all right? So now you just went way over my head. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you explain that in layman's terms?
Well, I mean, if you're an average person, and you're trying to get anything done with the government, you go in there, and there's like 50 pages of stuff for, I want to cut down a tree, Nothing is simple. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where when I file a case in court, I go down there to the courthouse, or my assistant does, and there's a 30-page single-space list of how much it costs to file each kind of document. So you stand there in line with the clerk, and now the clerks can only be open half as long because, there's not enough money, because every time someone comes to the desk, they look up there and they got to sort through this 30-page thing, finding out how much something costs. And that thing is true of everything. If you want to build a trail for ATVs and you're the government, you have to go out and have a plane fly over it with some sort of special radar that can map things down to a 6-inch decrement and spend $500,000 doing something that, two rednecks and a bulldozer can do in a weekend.
Yeah.
And there's a pervasive way in which the government has gotten more and more and more complicated, and yet there seems to be no constituency for simplification. And the evil handmaiden of this is that the decisions are made further and further and further away from the people on the ground. And so you've got these people sitting in these ivory towers down in Salem or in Washington, D.C., writing these rules that are 50 pages long with, subpart 57B sub Q little I 42, and nobody can do anything. You can't comply with anything because the rules are so complicated that no matter what you do, you're always out of compliance.
Wow.
And this happens because everything is centralized and taken far away, and we're not allowed to make our own decisions. And we need things like these broad-based movements to, if you've got land in Oregon, why should the federal government be in charge of the land in Oregon?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's going to be state forests, why shouldn't they be state forests, not federal forests? What do these people know? They burned up $10 billion worth of timber a few years ago because they decided, our rules say that we can't fight forest fires in wilderness areas using anything other than our bare hands.
See, I'm telling you, James, if you get out on the campaign trail and talk like you just did, you're going to win this thing running away. Okay? That's what people want to hear. You're talking from the guts.
I'm ready to say it. It's true.
It's time. James Buchal, B-U-C-H-A-L. He's the guy we've been telling you now for, 2 weeks since the ballots have been out. We've been saying, James, I have to tell you, this show has bent over backwards to make sure. We have received, literally, I am not kidding, when I say hundreds of phone calls here who say, how do you spell that last name again? So there's going to be a lot of votes for you. I guarantee you.
Oh, I hope so. It would be embarrassing to not even be able to be written in.
Well, you're going to get at least 3 from our house, so at least you just know you're going to get those 3, okay? No, but I'm serious. There are hundreds of people that I've run into, literally thousands of people that I've talked to on the radio who have said, give me that name again. How do I write that in? So that's what's going on. I think there's going to be a groundswell coming up in this primary, and then it's going to really be up to you and people like myself who will make you available at any time on the radio after May, when we get into the bare knuckles, as we say, or the brass knuckles, through the rest of the year into November. So, James, B-U-C-H-A-L, he's an attorney up in Portland. Do you have anything set up yet, a Facebook page, website, anything for people to learn more?
No, I've been pretty busy. I mean, there's a Facebook page somewhere. I have a website. I programmed it myself, so for some reason it works in some browsers and doesn't work in others.
Okay.
I thought I would wait and see whether the write-in process actually works.
And I don't blame you.
Invest a lot of effort in that.
I don't blame you. All right, here's what we'll do. We'll just keep banging away here from our end and make sure you get written in on everybody's ballot, and then after May, and we'll really start getting serious. How does that sound?
That sounds good. And there's a website called conservativecrew.com that has a bunch of right-thinking candidates that has a little bit of material from me, not much.
Okay. All right. Oh, wait.
So we'll beef it up over time.
All right. I believe you. Let me... okay. Well, this is a question. Let me just ask you a question. I'm reading it because a listener just wrote a question. And I don't think this is a fair question because I'm going to ask you this, but I don't think it's a fair question because it's not really relevant. But it says, what took you so long to step up to the plate and get into the race?
I've got a real life and a real job.
So you weren't looking to be an elected official?
No. This was the Republican Party calls up and says, hey, we don't want to be embarrassed by having a Democrat win our primary again. Can you help?
So you volunteered to be a help to the Republican Party?
Yeah.
Now you're willing to go the extra mile once you are nominated through the primary process.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed campaigning. I ran a couple times for state representative 10 years ago or so.
Okay. So that's why I said, to me, it wasn't a fair question from the listener, but they didn't know. I knew the history of what had happened with this whole situation. There were no Republican candidates for either Attorney General or Treasurer, and the Oregon Republican Party approached you and Thomas Cox, and both of you guys said, you bet, let's do it. Now, I give you absolute kudos for doing that, because you could have easily said, no thanks, I'm very busy. But you said, okay, and I respect you for that, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it costs money like everything else.
Yes, it does. All right. Once again, Attorney General on the Republican ballot, or if you're a non-affiliated and you requested the Freedom ballot, which was the blue, you should have a blue slip of paper. You'll want to write in James, Buchal, for Attorney General. James, I appreciate you talking to us today, and we will talk after May 15th.
All right, great talking with you.
Thank you, James. You take care. James Buchal, Buchal. He is the write-in candidate. Under Attorney General, you're writing in James Buchal, Buchal.